because here we are, we're getting ready for a new month, and I'm kind of excited about this month. We are actually officially now into the second half of the year, right? So when we were back in June, people were like, oh my gosh, we're already halfway through the year. But energetically speaking, from a BaZi and Feng Shui perspective, we don't actually enter into the second half of the year until the monkey month. Okay, so lots going on here, both energetically, just the movement of energy. So I'm just curious to get some feedback from y'all, from the little chat box, just to summarize what it was like the last month or so, and where everybody's headspace is at going into the second half of the year. And we're going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation because we got quite a bit to cover. Again, for those that are joining us for the first time, we have all of the previous BaZi and Feng Shui talk on my YouTube channel. I always encourage folks, especially if this is your first time tuning in, to at least watch the last month's YouTube video, maybe even going back 2 months, just to give you a little bit of perspective on what we're covering. And also for all of you guys that have been following and diligently studying BaZi and just paying attention to how energy shows up in your own life, I think it's also good to kind of go back into the previous month because all of that is forecast talk. Obviously, a lot of this is very general. It's not specific to your chart, but the overarching theme of the month. And it's good to compress from that, to process from the previous month so that we can better prepare ourselves for what's to come. So you know where to find those. So we're jumping right in. We're going to talk about Feng Shui because it's the easiest to talk about, and there's a lot going on energetically with our Feng Shui. So again, just to break this down, energy, as we know, has many different components, and there's hierarchies, and they're all intertwined and interconnected. They can stand on their own, but then they also interact with each other. And so when we're talking about understanding the energy of our environment, we have to first remember that there is a what we call the base chart of any property, whether that's a residential or a commercial space. And the base chart is very much like the essence of that property. And the essence is derived from the birth chart of the property, just like you and I have our own birth chart. And this is the chart that actually details, you know, the very specific strengths and weaknesses of that particular property. So it's much, much more comprehensive, more complex. And that is the foundation. Like, I never go and do a Feng Shui review with a client without first starting with the base chart of the property. So that's that. And obviously, that's not something we can cover here because everybody's homes are different. And everyone's homes have different year it was built, have different facing directions, have different floor plans. The configuration and the function of those spaces are different. And then finally, you have different people living inside that house. So you can't usually generalize Feng Shui. Like, that's why we can't necessarily give very, what do you call this? Like one size fits all recommendation, just very similar to saying keto works for everyone or veganism works for everyone, because everyone's bodies are different, right? So, but again, the understanding the base chart requires professional review. Then the second layer to how energy works within our space is understanding the yearly influence. And that's where the different animal signs comes in, like this is the year of the snake. And in Feng Shui, we also have annual energy. Annual energy means it changes every year, okay? Just like every year affects your BaZi chart differently, every year affects the house or the office space differently. That's why some years everybody's happy at home. And then some years your washing machine is breaking down and your house is flooding and everybody's grumpy, okay? So The annual star, you can actually get these instructions when you participate in the Chinese New Year talk, because a lot of that is detailed, the thematic, foundation of what to expect this year is covered in that talk. And that talk, you can actually purchase it separately, and it's an annual tradition that I offer. So in these talks that I offer complimentary to our community is where we cover the monthly energy. So obviously, the month is not as weighty and intense as the year or the base, okay? Because you require much deeper understanding of how feng shui actually works. However, in the meantime, you can still, take care of your environment by at least following the monthly energy, and that is what we are providing here today. So I want to just explain that. I know I explained it in a couple of the videos in the past, but sometimes we get new folks watching, and it just gives them a basis of understanding. So when we talk about August, August is the 7th until the 7th of September. And this is the flying star chart for the month, okay? And just a quick review, we work with 9 types of energy, okay? And these qualities of energies, we use numbers to label them. It's not numerology, okay? That's a separate modality, okay, that people study numerology. It has nothing to do with feng shui. The numbers are simply attached to different types of qualities of energy. And from this little box here, you can see that the 2 most negative, okay, negative, not helpful energy is labeled number 2 and number 5. And number 2 is sickness. Number 5 is misfortune. So sickness it can be anywhere that manifests physically, like there's a physical sickness, like I have a headache, I have migraines, I'm not sleeping well, my digestion's out of whack, or to like more severe type of sickness, chronic illness, etc. But you also, elements can translate beyond the physical, which can also manifest emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually, right? So maybe you're not impacted by the sickness energy in your physical body, but you might be feeling anxious, or you might be feeling worried, right? Or you might be experiencing more vivid dreams or nightmare like that. Or maybe, you just generally have a more negative, depressive outlook like this. So that's how sickness can manifest. Misfortune basically covers everything that you don't want in life. Okay, so it does also cover sickness, even though it's not labeled as such, because sickness can be a hardship. So when we talk about misfortune, it's anything that you don't want. Negative impact on your relationships, negative impact on your finances, right? Negative impact in your community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So while the energy itself is quite broad and general, again, it depends on how this misfortune energy interacts with the base chart of your house, which everybody is different, okay? And you have to also remember, and I preach this all the time, our BaZi chart is like the immune system. So if our BaZi is good and strong, and then we're making good, healthy choices, then we won't succumb, to the negative energy of our environment as much. It doesn't mean it goes away. It just means we might be inconvenienced. We might experience a little bit of discomfort, but it's not going to throw us off, okay? But the more difficult part is if your BaZi chart is under clash, in a penalty, maybe the fire years are not your favorable element, right? So the BaZi is weak. Think of that as your immune system is a bit compromised. So then it might impact your way of thinking. It might impact your confidence, right? So that's when we do silly things, even though we know they may not be good for us, but sometimes we do it anyway. And then you have bad feng shui, like being influenced by misfortune, then it's only going to amplify things, right? So it's not just I have an unexpected bill for the month, but maybe I have a true outflow of finances and I am now in debt, right? Or it's not just a miscommunication in this relationship, but suddenly it's snowballed into we're not talking anymore and we're breaking up kind of a thing. So I have to preface this and remind people, because until you actually understand the essence of how feng shui works in our environment, particularly how it interacts with the human factor, which is our personal energy, and we interpret that using our BaZi, then it's very difficult for some people to understand like why taking care of your feng shui is just as important. Because think of your environment as like the container that holds you. And so at the minimum, I always tell people to take care of their annual feng shui. And then if you have the energy and the capacity and the enthusiasm and curiosity, then do the monthly as well. But then if you're really like all in, then go ahead and also do the base chart analysis, because then you have a more holistic understanding of your space. Now, particularly if you're building a house, you're planning to live in your house forever, or some version of that, or you're getting ready to make a big, bold move, like renovating, changing up space. Maybe you're just recently an empty nester. There's some energetic shift that's happening in your environment, and you just want it to be a little bit more supportive. So our rule of thumb for our lay folks, okay, unless you've completed the certification program, but for our lay folks, the rule of thumb is to always, always cure negative energy. And when we cure, it's essentially placing these feng shui objects in different sectors, in different areas of our home. And as you can see from the map for this month, the monkey, all of these numbers in red are the most precarious, sensitive, potentially harmful area in our spaces this coming month. And you can see that the 2-5 combination, so this is the sickness and misfortune, this, I will tell you, has always been the culprit to a lot of the things that people don't desire, people don't want, from many, many levels. And I don't have the time. This is not the space to kind of dive into that. But it's going to be in the center of our home. And everybody has a center, right? When you look at your floor plan, you're going to have a center. And now, but everyone's center is going to look different, right? So some people's center is a wall or a hallway, or if your particular property has sort of like a more open floor plan concept and the center of your home is open, right? Because then if it's open, it allows the energy to move, and it becomes a much easier place to distribute and connect and stimulate energy all throughout the house. Then those are the people that will be a little bit more sensitive this month, because then the sickness and misfortune energy it has now can't speak right now, have the support from the physical design of the property to allow it to get activated. And so we have to cure that. Okay, so obviously the northeast and southwest sector are also sensitive this coming month, because those are the combo that can create all the types of sickness, ailments, discomfort that I described earlier. So you got to ask yourself, what's in the southwest, northeast, and northeast side of my property or my office, right? Or, if it's a place that you don't spend time in, like a spare bedroom, laundry room, or just an empty space, then don't worry about it. But if southwest and northeast is like your front door, your kitchen, your office, your primary place of gathering, right? Because you're obviously using the space, so you're activating chi, you're activating energy. And then depending on the functionality of that space, you're obviously doing something important. Like if I'm sleeping, it's about restoration and healing that's going to be impacted. If I'm working also will impact my concentration and prosperity, right? So maybe that will create some hiccups in whatever type of project or endeavor that you're doing. So take a snapshot of the screen. This gives you the direction. These are templates, okay? And our feng shui objects are always the same. Don't even overthink it. Don't try to get creative and sassy. Just follow the instructions. The center part is where we need to have our 6 metal rod wind chime. The 6 coins need to be located in the southwest and northeast sector. We have the 3 bamboos in a clear glass vase, okay, not in dirt, not in rocks, literally clear glass vase with water. And then southeast and east is where we have the fire element, which is anything color red. Okay, so you can have a red candle, a red pillow, a red doormat, whatever red, a salt lamp, okay? And so you wanna just strategically place them in these particular areas of your home. You don't have to show them, meaning if you have coins, you can put it under the table, under a floor mat, behind a piece of furniture, whatever. Okay, so it doesn't have to be displayed for it to be effective, but these particular feng shui objects, based on their material, color, shape, they all have meaning to address these negative stars. Okay. Obviously, like I said, the center of our home is very sensitive this month. So that means energetically, the feng shui will impact everyone. Okay, nobody can escape this because everybody has a center. Again, if you're curious about a comprehensive feng shui evaluation, please reach out to me and I can walk you through that. It's a lot of it's a lot of work because it's site visit. We also review the BaZi. There's report writing. Think of this as like a home inspection, but instead of a home inspection, it's like an energy inspection for your house. So you get a report, you get post-consultation support, you get 1 more year's review, depending on your situation. And so we can talk about, you can schedule a 15-minute discovery call with me if you're interested. Now I'm rolling out something new because I've had a good handful of clients that have asked for this service. And this is a basic floor plan outline, because when we look at directions, we actually place the natal chart in a circle above, like we overlay it as a circle over your floor plan. And the reason being is we work with 360 degrees, and 360 degrees is a circle. It's not a square, okay? And that's how we dissect and delineate the individual sectors. So we use the term sector for identifying locations. And this usually involves a little bit of training. I have students that have taken the course, have learned how to do this properly. But for lay folks that maybe have not studied this, but you might want to have a more accurate dissection of the sectors in your home or office, I am now offering this service. So what it is you just submit your floor plan to me. I will work you through a couple of things. I need a couple of details in order for me to actually put this together. Now, we got to remember, this is not an actual feng shui evaluation. This is just me sort of providing this sketch so that when you follow your monthly feng shui, you'll know exactly what rooms are in the south and what rooms are in the east. So you're not just eyeballing it, okay? Because sometimes I have clients that maybe miss it because the way that we place the circle also depends on the shape of the floor plan, which can get super technical. And I don't have the time to teach like that. So if you're interested in a service like this, it's 99 bucks, and I can usually turn it around within the next day. And you'll always have this copy with you until you're ready to move on to the next phase or learn the technique yourself. Okay. Let me just check some, office, bathroom. Oh, we survived July. Okay. Well, if we watched July's BaZi talk, it was an earth penalty. That's okay. We're almost done with the earth penalty because we're moving on to the fire penalty with the monkey. Okay, so, all right. Monkey month. So in a couple of days, based on today's recording, we're going to enter into the Yang Wood Monkey month. And Yang Wood, just like the Chinese character, you can see it looks like a tree. So we say yang wood people are like a tree. They're very generous, right? Because they kind of provide shade to the people around them. They don't really move, so they're reliable. They belong to the wood elements, so they're very kind. And because in Chinese medicine, we also say yang wood is like the head in the body. And you can see this looks like the head and the spine. We say yang wood people are very innovative, they're brilliant minded, they can be a little eccentric, which is another way of describing someone as weird, okay, or unique, okay. They just think outside of the box. They have, you know, if you want to have a team where their vision is kind of like out there, you know, a Yangwood person usually can display those types of characteristics. That's why you have, you know, people like Britney Spears and Elon Musk and Keanu Reeves, like they're very different, you know, they're eccentric. And that's one aspect of yang wood. Because it is the head, it also describes a person who might be too much in their head, so they can be overthinkers, for example. They can get stuck in their heads, so they're prone to depression, for example, or mental health issues, because it's all like up here, it's all about the head. So I'm describing the quality of the person because I want you to imagine that the month is like a person. So the month of August is like this brilliant, eccentric, weird, innovative person that can also experience some depression, you know, some mental block, okay? And because it also is like the spine and the limbs of the body, this is also about needing to be a little bit more flexible because the tree doesn't move, okay? Just the branches, but the trunk itself, right, is static. It's grounded, it's rooted into the earth. And so there's aspects of yang wood that's very inflexible, very stubborn, you know, strong-willed, my way or the highway kind of a thing. So there's a lot going on with this yang wood. Now, every August is not yang wood, okay? It changes. It just so happened that August 2025 is a yang wood monkey, but August is always monkey, okay? That is always fixed forever and ever. But sometimes it's fire monkey, water monkey, metal monkey. This year, it's wood monkey. So let's talk about the monkey. Like I said earlier, this is officially the second half. August also marks the start of the autumn season, even though we are dying and melting here in Arizona. But from an energetic perspective, this is the start of autumn, okay? So, and because it is the transition to autumn, think about it as the big shift from the yang season into the yin season. You know, yang season is spring and summer. Wow, so much going on, birthing, pushing, everyone's cuckoo and energetic and cray-cray and, you know, a lot going on. And then autumn and winter. I mean, just observe Mother Nature, you know, close your eyes for a second and just kind of envision what is nature doing? And the start of autumn is when you can kind of sense that cool breeze, which I long for in the summer here. But it's that cool, like suddenly you're like, the air smells differently, you know? There's a crisp kind of breezy feel in the air. You start to see a little bit of the turning of the colors on the trees. You know, the trees are still green, but there's just a little bit of signs of like, woo, that's turning orange, and then it's turning a little yellow, like this. Okay, so just imagine, again, you're putting this together. That's what August represent. And the thing is here, at least in the West, like this is when people go back to school, families come back from the holiday trip, vacation, and we all kind of come back and we're all FOMOing because, wow, you know, I took a month off and I spent a lot of money and I got to work. When really, if we were paying attention to how nature operates in a cycle. It's no mystery. I mean, I talk about the Alaska bear. I mean, they are literally wild and crazy right now because they are hungry. They're trying to get fat. Why? Because they will be getting ready to hibernate. To hibernate. Are we getting ready to hibernate? I don't think so. Again, this is the reason why our society has a lot of anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff, right? Because we are not paying attention to how are we supposed to really operate in a cyclical manner that agrees with and cooperates with the season. Okay, this is what we truly define as to be in the flow, right? But we're not. Most people are, getting ready to run wild and crazy here. So it's the birthplace of water. So for the first time this year, this month, we will start to feel a little bit of water energy. This whole first half of the year, we're parched, okay? No water. And that impacts our overall kind of spirit self, our spirit side, because water is about spirit. Water is the adrenal. Water is our clarity, But we've been like, we're kind of just, what do you call this? Metal to the pedal to the metal. I forget what the American phrase is, but we go, we came out of the dragon year, OMG, and we're just like, wah, right? Going to the first half of the year. But we were dehydrated, right? Parched. But for the first time now, in a couple of days, when the monkey month officially begins, it will start to invite, okay, a little bit of water. That's why we call it, monkey is the birthplace of water. Think of it as like some mountain dew, like a little droplets of water, okay? In Chinese medicine, we say the metal element is related to the spirit or the soul, okay? So there's also something deeply spiritual about August. The stock market always acts a little bit weird in August, and then it acts weird again in October. But generally speaking, in history, the stock market always kind of, like it kind of just, I don't know how to describe that in English, but it has a erratic to it. Things are very sudden or abrupt, like this, because energetically we're transitioning from the yang season to the yin season. Just think about when you're transitioning in your life, when you quit a job and then you start a business, or when you quit a job and you start a new job, or you sell your house and you move to a new house, that transition, I mean, that's a lot, right? Well, this is talking about the energy of the mass, like the collective, right? So there is a lot going on. So that's why even the stock market behaves this way, because who participates in the stock market is people, right? So give yourself a little grace if you feel, some sense of that erraticness. And the general theme of August is to prepare to let go. This is not quite the letting go, but it's to prepare. We all have to prepare, okay, in one way, shape, or form. We can't just pull the trigger, all right? This is about preparation. All right. So again, this is the breakdown. When you learn BaZi, you will actually remember that our year begins on February 4th, not based on the Gregorian calendar. That's why February, March, April is considered the springtime. A lot of like acupuncturists that didn't study in like traditional Chinese schools get this wrong too, okay? So you always have to follow the original way of how the timeline is defined. May, June, July, which we just finished, was the fire season, summer, and now we're officially entering into the metal season. So for those that have been very diligently studying their own BaZi chart, if you know that the metal element is favorable to you, then you might actually begin to feel that energy like, oh, thank the Lord, I'm doing better. I'm going to be better in the fall. If you haven't felt that way in the first half of the year, because maybe too much fire for you, your BaZi chart hasn't been so favorable. So you may feel a little bit more burned out, right? Kind of like lethargic, like, pressure, etc. But then when we move into the metal to the yin season, starting with the metal, you might begin to actually feel just a different momentum. Okay, so everybody's got their ups and downs. We all have our time. Sometimes it's your time, sometimes it's not my time. Now, for me personally, when I know it's not my time, I go away. Like I literally do not engage because I know I have to be in a good place to serve and help others. So I don't have enough ego, I guess, to keep pushing, you know, because we think that that's, oh, I'm resilient and I'm persevering. Yes, there's a time and a place for that, but that's why I schedule certain things for myself in a particular season and a particular time when I know it's much more favorable to me. So, and I do that because I hope to set out as an example for my clients and my students that also want to be a little bit more in sync with the energy of BaZi and Feng Shui. All right, so like I said, autumn, right? The leaves are starting to yellow, but remember, the leaves haven't left the tree yet, like they haven't fallen off the tree, okay? So it's just the preparation. It just is a signal, ooh, change is about to happen. So think about like where you're at in your life. You know, it doesn't have to be big things. Maybe it's just a small project or maybe you know, just a small personal thing for yourself. You're like, maybe this is the time, you know, maybe I need to get myself more grounded. Maybe I need to, you know, close the loop on that engagement in order for me to move forward to the next project, right? So it's also a reminder that is the beginning of the end. And endings always result in new beginnings. And we have to be more accepting and more just as enthusiastic about endings as we are about beginnings, because we can't have beginnings without endings. And a lot, I think, in the Western culture, we don't, it's not being morbid. I think sometimes I get people that describe me, oh my gosh, Jen, that's so morbid. Talk about death all the time. But it does incite a different kind of appreciation and humility and just the realism around why endings are just as important as beginnings. And so wherever you are, whether that's the ending soon of a relationship or the ending soon of a career or an addiction, you know, or of a person like this, they can be just as beautiful as new beginnings. You know, we all celebrate the new beginnings, but everybody sometimes carry a bit of shame or embarrassment when something is ending, and that's not the case, okay? Deep time for gratitude. So let's talk about emotions. A very interesting combination of emotions this month because we have grief and anger. And the wood and metal element in the 5 elements are in a destructive relationship because metal cuts wood, conquers wood, or destroys wood. So they are in a conflicting position. It means there is conflict. Okay, they are not in harmony. And so emotionally speaking, it can incite a lot of conflicting emotions. So we'll dive into that. Metal cuts wood, okay, is a very popular BaZi saying. And because I mentioned Yang Wood is the head, I know that we just finished mental health awareness, but again, that has nothing to do with Chinese metaphysics. We're talking about this particular time period right now is going to be like an extension of that mental health awareness, okay? And obviously our mental health affects every aspects of our lives. And because they are in a conflicting position, it will kind of make us confused, you know what I mean? Because we might be grieving about something, maybe a relationship ended, maybe we lost someone, maybe we experienced some form of hurt and disappointment, and we're grieving that. We feel sad. Like grief also just means sad, melancholic, like this. But we are communicating the sadness through anger, right? Maybe we're acting out, we're lashing out, or vice versa. Okay, so you ask yourself, am I like if I'm throwing things, am I really angry or am I behaving this way because I'm actually sad? Okay, so this is a very confusing and has very deep psychological analysis between the relationship of grief and anger. And so I'm just going to give you a preview of this, and then I want you to meditate on this. So a couple of questions just to prompt you to do an interior examination, if you will. Do you feel like you have control over your life? Okay. The last month sessions that I had with people have been mostly positive, but there was a very similar underlying tone about those sessions of they didn't exactly articulate, like, I feel like I don't have control over my life, but there's just a lot of things happening outside of them, right? Like somebody got sick, somebody got into a car accident, somebody got laid off. Like these are things you have no control over, right? But the question is, where are you in that regard? Like, are you actually feeling helpless, right? And helplessness move you into despair. So then you just feel like a victim because I don't have any control over my life. Okay. Have you experienced injustice or betrayal recently? Maybe not even recently. Maybe they're surfacing from events that happened in the past because maybe some event or conversation or person triggered that memory. You know, we all, one way, shape, or form, have been dealt with unfairness, whether we got overlooked a promotion, we were underappreciated on some things. Maybe we were just treated unfairly for whatever reason. Maybe a friend broke a promise, they didn't really come through. Like all of these are different forms of injustices. Again, if that's the case, like how do you feel about that? Do you have unresolved resentment, you know, or victimhood that you feel about that? That's driving your actions. Maybe you currently don't have your needs met, you know, right? Like maybe you just want your partner to tell you you're doing a good job, you know. I have a client in Georgia, and she's a medical student, and you know, one of the questions I asked her is, are you doing all of these to prove to your father that you can do it, or are you actually proving it to yourself, right? And we got to the root of it. It was really, I am chasing my father's approval because that's an unmet expectation. I want my father's approval. And it became the driving force to a lot of decisions. And so again, it's just a question, you know, is your boss as supportive as they said they are? You know, are you getting what you need from your friendships, you know, your relationships, etc.? Okay. Again, any unresolved feelings. August is also a very interesting month that I'll also see is it's actually the feeling of apathy. And for those who don't know what that means, apathy, just kind of like a I don't care feel, you know, outlook, like whatever, you know. So it's not so much a neutral emotion where you're not triggered. It's more like a dismissive emotion, and that can also come up because August can be a triggering month. And when we get to the BaZi piece with fire penalty, it can actually be very triggering for a lot of people. And one of the coping mechanism is to be apathetic. Like, I don't care, whatever. You do whatever you want to do. I'll do whatever I want to do. Okay. So that's also not healthy. Or you're in a state of panic. Okay. You're always asking, why is this happening to me? Why, Jen? Why? Why is he such a jerk? And there's a time and a place to ask those questions. But if you're in a loop that you can't get yourself out of, that's a pretty good telltale sign to what can we do to prepare you to let go of that loop, okay? So, or, you know, how are you doing with your stress responses right now? And I know that a lot of kids went back to school last week, this week, you know, parents, they're getting back into routine. There's a lot of stress and kind of manic energy that's happening right now. And so it's just good to just drop in and ask yourself, you know, how am I coping with my environmental stresses? So I think it's important to remember that if And when I'm talking about anger, it's not always about throwing things and screaming. Sometimes, and more often than not, anger is actually suppressed. You don't often see people cry in public, and you don't often see people scream in public. If anything, we're a society where we like to put on a facade. Everything's fine, I'm good, all good, right? And so anger often shows up in people in a very suppressed way. And so it's just good to kind of check in and see if you have any unresolved anger. But it's good to understand that anger is also part of the grieving process, healing process. Um, and when you recognize that, then you can put a plan, right? Put a plan and start to actually move forward. All right, so mental health awareness, I think this is so important, especially with the fire penalty month, is to ramp up our self-care practices, whatever that might look like for you. And no excuse, I don't have time, Jen. Sorry. Do you have time to go to the doctor? You got time to go to the ER? You got time to have a mental breakdown, right? So self-care is all about preventative, right? We're doing what we need to do proactively, so we're not just in response mode, which always tends to be what happens with people. They go until they basically drop to the floor, right? So try not to get to that place. That's the whole point of working on yourself, is to be able to catch yourself in the moment rather than at the end of the line. Working with professionals is also very helpful, a little bit more body work, okay, talk therapy, BaZi, life coaching analysis, whatever. These are also very helpful depending on what you're dealing with. Surround yourself with good people, and also minimize negativity, however it may show up. Okay, because there's going to be a lot of sensitivity around that this coming month. And so the more we can create boundaries around that, the better we will be. Okay, so let's talk about this month. People with tiger signs in their BaZi chart will have a clash this month. Okay, so check out your BaZi, tiger, clash, clash, clash. And, if you watched my July talk, you noted how, the goat is a very powerful clash, which is where we have earthquakes. And by the way, when I was in Alaska, I experienced 2 tsunami warnings while I was there. Thankfully, nothing happened, but a lot of earthquake activities, volcanic eruptions, sinkholes, avalanches, right? And earth penalty is the most popular, and it's the I would say, highest volume of frequency that I see in Mother Nature and in humanity, okay? And the second one is fire penalty, which we'll talk here in a second. But monkey and tiger is part of the fire penalty clash. And in BaZi, we say monkey and tiger are land animals. And so a lot of the disruption, right, the clash of monkey and tiger are sea, air, and land. So aviation, maritime, and what do you call this? Aviation and automobile, okay? So things like multi-car pileups, car crashes, fender benders, trains, derailments, all of that. When you learn the BaZi for that, you'll see that there is some combination of tiger and monkey, okay? So just be extra careful how you're driving and all that jazz. And this is John Nash. So he was portrayed in a movie with Russell Crowe called A Beautiful Mind. So John Nash was a very special man. He was a Nobel Prize winner. He was a mathematician, Yangwood person, you see, brilliant-minded, but he was also mentally ill because he had like schizophrenic or bipolar or something like this. So anyway, he lived a very long life with his wife, who was portrayed by Jennifer Connelly in the movie. But you see that when he was 78 years old, he entered into the tiger luck, and there's the monkey, right, his day. So that would have been a 10-year clash. You see, 78 to 88 years old. People's clashes can come in any part of their life, but he just happened to get it there at a ripe old age, okay? And on May 23rd of 2015, which was a whatchamacallit, a goat year, goat, very, very powerful element. And that was also a snake month and the pig. So if you remember from May, snake and pig also clash, okay? What had happened to him? He was in a car collision with his wife and they both passed away. But they passed away in a car crash, okay? It wasn't, you know, like old age, you know, whatever. It was a car crash. Then you have Dale Earnhardt Jr., okay? So he's a race car driver or whatever. I don't know anything about him. But again, you see Dale Earnhardt, I should add Jr. there. He was born in the year of the tiger and the day of the monkey. So naturally, he already has a clash. So this is a telltale sign of a person that has a very restless spirit. You know, they can't settle down. They're always on the go. They may even be diagnosed with ADD because it's all about that unsettled energy. It's because he was born already with a clash, you know, so he has a tendency to be the opposite of calm, okay? So look, when he turned 40, so 40 to 50, this was the luck of the tiger. That means it activated that dormant clash. So in essence, he would have had a double clash. Well, what happened? On August 15, 2019, look at all the monkey, okay? That's when he was in an airplane crash. That was also the year of the pig. The pig is about airplanes, okay? But that wasn't his only accident because you got to remember, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was born with a clash. That means every 12 days is a clash. Okay, so he spends his whole life kind of always a bit on edge. And he was, I think he made a comment that he had endured more than 20 concussions in his life. He's been in like a whole number of car crashes. Now, obviously, he's a race car driver. He also, I think he flies planes or something like that. You can't blame the guy for choosing those careers because it's probably where he feels most connected to because he's always on the move like this. So if I drive fast car, or I ride a motorcycle, you know, or I climb the highest mountain, it fulfills that part of their essence, right? But then at the same time, it's like a catch-22. They are more susceptible to accidents, you know, and mishaps. Yeah, so that's an example, okay, of accidents. I have a client. You see, he was born in the year of the monkey and he has 2 tigers. This is the kind of configuration we don't like. We don't like duplications. And obviously, when you have an interior clash already in your 4 pillars, you're much more susceptible, you know, like I said, every 12 days, you're under clash. Well, when he turned 42, you see there's the monkey. So it will activate his double clash, which means for 10 years, he will have a quadruple clash. So it goes aligned with when he turned 42 because he just turned 45 this year. So 3 years ago, leading up to this luck, got divorced, got remarried or met somebody, and I don't think they're married, they're gonna get married, but had his first child. He was fired and then he got a new job and he got hurt. He had an accident in his job, hurt his spine and is healing from that. So there's just a lot of disruption. You see these times of disruption, it affects your money, affects your health, relationship, right? So clashes are good because it creates new experiences, but it can be a disruptor, right? So it's all about how to navigate, you know, regulate your own energetic self in the midst of chaos, all right? So here we are with the fire penalty. Remember that this is the year of the snake and we are entering into the month of the monkey. That means if you have a tiger sign in your chart, not only would you have a clash this month, but then you would also have a fire penalty. So that's why there's a lot of sensitivity coming into this month where July is its own energy and its own madness, but August will have its own unique, okay? Because now the energy of the monkey will have a connection with the year, which is so powerful because that's the energy present right now. So you have to look at your BaZi chart to see if you have any of these signs. You can take a snapshot and look at that. But fire penalty affects us in many ways, okay? From a health perspective, these are all fire diseases, okay? Cardiovascular health, right? Your reproductive system, thyroid, your eyeballs. And then the fire emotion, which is all of this. And then we just talked about, the physicality of the clash that the fire penalty can create. And guess what? In Mother Nature, forest fire, fire bombs, fire tornadoes, bombs, explosions, gunfights, anything of that sort. And obviously, when there's too much fire, it depletes the water. So we can also experience the opposite, which is drought. Okay. So if Mother Nature can respond in the same way, and I always say this, then we are no exception. We're not greater than nature. We're members of nature. And so if you see that you have this fire penalty configuration, then you just have to be a little bit more careful. And I've shared this before in the past, but it's an easy share. Look at Elvis Presley. See, he was already born with a clash. I was trying to imitate his dancing, but you can't see my legs. So he already has a clash. And when he turned 39, this decade right here is the snake, right? So there's that fire penalty. And then August 16, 1977, at the age of 42, which he would be right here. Look, that was the year of the snake, the month of the monkey, the day of the snake. We don't know exactly what time he passed, but there's all that fire penalty, and he died of a heart attack, or at least that was the cause of death, even though it was probably through a whole slew of other stuff like substance abuse. Then for those who remember, Krista McAuliffe was a lay person. She was a teacher. She was hand-selected to be an astronaut to fly the Challenger, the ill-fated Challenger. I've talked about her many, many times. You see, she was also born with the tiger monkey in her BaZi. And then when she turned 28, there's that snake again, very similar to Elvis Presley. So for that 10 years, she has that fire penalty. And then on that fateful day, which, by the way, if you've ever watched the documentary, they actually tried to launch that rocket, spaceship, rocket, whatever, later, but they were under pressure to try to get it going. And so it happened to be the monkey day. So that day was a fire penalty, right, for her. Okay, now I checked the other astronauts that were with her. Some of them had clashes, which is appropriate because clash means change, like they're going. This is a life-changing event, right? Their status as astronauts are changing. Their relationships are probably evolving as a result. So that's fine. But she was the only one with the fire penalty. So they picked the wrong person. And so sometimes it's not about you when you experience these hiccups, but it might be your partner, it might be your kid, it might be your business partner. Because remember, we're all energy beings and we share energy. And so why do you think Chinese people get a little bit cuckoo when they go into business or they enter into a collaborative relationship? Also, when they enter into a marital union, I'll get Chinese mommies, wanting to look at the mother-in-law, the sister-in-law, the whole thing, because you're inheriting all of their energy as well as your own energy. And I've mentioned this in the past. You remember John F.K. Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. So JFK Jr. was the one flying the plane. And if you watch the documentary, she actually didn't want to go with him that day, but he asked her to come with her. And that event, when you look at their BaZi charts side by side, it was actually her chart that was in trouble. But they're together, right? So she shared her little bit of misfortune, right? And I'm not just saying like you should avoid people, but it's to understand like, okay, they're in a precarious state. How can I be more patient with them? How can I be more loving? How can I, what do they need? Because when people are in this kind of state, they need a little bit more energetic support. That's all. I'm not saying run away, but if it's a chronic long thing, maybe, reevaluate how you're entering into that relationship. I see this happen all the time in marriages, okay? All right, so these are just some dates for you to capture. These are the Tiger days, all right, which are also clash days. So again, if this applies to you, good to know. Every 3 to 5 a.m. Is the Tiger hour. So you might, even if you have a clash, you might notice you wake up a lot earlier, or you can't sleep, type of things. And then we want to be mindful of the snake and monkey days as well. And it's not to be fearful again, but you just want to be mindful, right? If it applies to you and you can avoid doing important things on that day, then avoid it. But if you have a commitment to go do something, go ahead. Life has to happen, right? But you are prepared, to go into that day a little bit more relaxed, maybe a little bit more, have space in your calendar, maybe you go to bed a little bit earlier the night before, you prep your stuff so that you are feeling a little bit more grounded and calm going into that day. That's the best that we can. And it sounds simple, but a lot of people find it very difficult to do that. Nobleman. Okay. Years ending 5 and 9, or if you were born in the year or day of Yin Wood and Yin Earth. Okay. So look at your BaZi chart, right? If you see this on your year pillar, Yin Earth, your day pillar, Yin Earth. Okay. I know they kind of look similar, right? Yin Wood day, then this whole month is your Nobleman month, okay? So if you do have a fire penalty, but it's also a Nobleman, that means you'll be fine. You'll be all right, okay? I'm launching a new workshop. It's only in person, by the way. Good reason to take a trip to Arizona. But this is a great workshop for existing clients and students to further enhance their knowledge, particularly with the 3 most active and tangible energy quality, which is Clash, Nobleman, and Peach Blossom. So this is 2 hours. We'll get a little bit more detail, make it more relevant into your day-to-day. So it just kind of helps to continue your learning where it's not like this, where it's just mostly very general, of course. And then we have our formal BaZi training next year. Information is on my website, payment plan available. BaZi packages are always a great way to help support you throughout the year. Gift certificates. Oh, thank you so much for those who buy gift certificates. I think it's such a generous gift. And every time I get those folks that schedule because of a gift card, I always let them know, I'm like, oh, that person loves you very, very much to gift you a BaZi session, because it's not like a spa, it's not like a pedicure, right? It's such a personal and unique experience that will stay with them for a long time. And so I acknowledge how generous and thoughtful that gift giving is. So that's available. And we have new dates rolling out for the latter part of this year. So save the date. Any questions? Let me see. I've got some. I survive. Center of my home is a bathroom. No worries. Tara, if your office is in the Northeast, you definitely need to put the cure. Oh, you can't see my chart? Can you see my screen now?
Yes, I can now.
So you weren't able to see whose chart? Like,
Well, you have the meeting view and then your screen. And I didn't see the different tabs, so I had to click to your.
oh,
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope you can see my screen now.
I can, yes, thanks.
Okay, well,
Sharon.
sorry about that. Well, I'll just I'll just scroll for a little bit because we're getting recorded just in case people can't. So were you able to see John Nash's chart?
No, I wasn't.
Did other people?
But yeah, I think it was not just me. So the
Oh,
way I
just
set
you.
up. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll leave it here and then we'll just scroll. But thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll stay on for a couple minutes. Don't forget to schedule your BaZi. We're getting ready to hit the home run here. Elvis. So sad. All right, guys. Well, best August to you. I look forward to speaking with you soon, I hope, or I'll see you next month. Happy monkey.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.